Imagine candlelit corridors in a drafty Tudor manor, rushes crunching under slippered feet, perfume of lavender clashing with the sharper stink of tallow. Somewhere beyond the tapestry of St. Margaret, a maid is warming a pewter bowl over coals, melting a paste that looks like custard but will soon be painted onto her mistress's face. The paste's chief ingredient is lead carbonate. Everyone in the household knows it blackens simmering stew pots and poisons well water. Yet nobody flinches as the lady, wrapped in a velvet dressing gown, tilts her chin so her skin can drink in danger for the sake of beauty. It always begins with the face. In early modern Europe, paleness is practical shorthand for wealth. If your cheek glows like moonlit parchment, it means you never weed fields, never haul buckets, never feel August sun. And once it becomes a symbol, it becomes mandatory. Venice calls its lead mixture cerussa. Paris markets a sibling potion as fard blanc. England just whispers spirit of Saturn, because even saying the metal's name aloud feels unlucky. Recipes vary. Some add vinegar to help the flakes dissolve, others a dash of borax to keep the sludge from separating. But every variation promises the same impossible thing: skin without pores, freckles, or mortality. Preparation is a tiny industrial horror show. First, you suspend coiled lead ribbons above bowls of vinegar and seal the contraption in horse manure. Warm rot encourages acetic fumes to nibble the metal into white crust. Servants scrape this dried frosting, grind it, then sift through silk. The result looks like angelic snow, yet carries death in every mote. Mix with rose water, stir till satin smooth, and you have bottled status. Handling it, maids develop coughs. Some complain their gums recede, teeth loosening as if the powder is gnawing the jaw from inside. When fingers start to tingle or joints lock, they whisper that it's merely the damp. A servant's joints always ache. That's the natural order. Besides, the mistress has a banquet tonight. Fashion waits for no cartilage. Application is ritual. First, raw skin must be shaved of any lingering peach fuzz. A quick graze with a sharpened clamshell does the trick. Then, a lemon slice rubbed across cheeks to open the flesh so the paint clings. It stings, but the mistress inhales, murmuring that pain is proof of progress. The maid daubs the lead cream with badger hair brush, starting a jawline and spiraling upward. Nose pore disappears. Freckle erased. Pulse at the temple quieted under Kabbalistic white. Once painted, she must sit motionless for half an hour while it dries into a fragile mask. Smile lines crack it, so she trains herself to laugh without moving lips, to love without grinning, to rage only with the eyes. If lead alone won't obliterate an obstinate spot, there is mercury sublimate, quicksilver snow, to scour it. The physician warns that mercury vapors cause trembling, but who trusts a man whose own beard is sunburned ruddy? Paleness is a woman's battlefield. Tremors are trivial collateral. When the mercury cream burns, she fans herself and thinks of compliments already gathering like moths around tomorrow's mask. After the mask sets, color must be reintroduced with caution. Too much rouge ruins the illusion. Nobility blushes only when conversation turns improper. The favored tint is made from cochineal beetles, dried, crushed into dust, mixed with egg white. One gentle smear across cheekbones, like the afterglow of a scandalous thought, then blotted until only suggestion remains. Lips, of course, need more vivid stain. Vermilion ground from cinnabar ore, or distilled from sulfur and mercury. She taps it on with her ring finger, one unsteady contact between poison and pulse. Now the scent. Lead smells faintly metallic, so she commissions a pomander carved of amber to wear at the waist, packed with clove, bergamot, and one pearl-sized lump of ambergris to extend the perfume's reach. When she walks, the ball rattles like a captive star, trailing breezes that gild the lie. I'm not ill, I'm exotically perfumed. Evening arrives. Musicians tune shawms, footmen light salt-fat torches. As she descends the staircase, guests murmur behind fans. The candlelight loves her. It refracts off white lead like moon off glaciers, turning her face into something almost divine. Women note the absence of pores. Men note too, but in simpler terms. She is luminous. No one sees the dull ache mounting behind her eyes, or the small black line edging her gums, a seam between vanity and bone rot. That seam will widen for years until jawbone itself softens like butter. But tonight conversation is cordial and gazes approving, so the future's hush can stay outside with the nightingales. The after-party truths. Removing the mask requires vinegar and puppy milk, recommended by apothecaries as the gentlest solvent. Rags of fine linen soak in the blend, then are pressed over face until outer layers dissolve into gooey scales. Each peel feels like tugging soul from skull. If any lead flakes linger by morning, a pumice stone will sand them off, leaving weeping pink. And over that rawness, tomorrow, the maid will paint another coat, thicker to cover new redness. It's a cycle. Conceal, corrode, conceal again, that quietly kills. Historians later inspect aristocratic skulls, find cratered bone disease, teeth that look gnawed by rats, skeletons 10 years older than their calendar age. Those bones echo tonight's compliments, still rattling across time. Lead face paint is only the gateway. Paleness extends beyond cheeks to chest, shoulders, even the hands that hold court cards. Noblewomen bathe forearms in diluted bleach of alum and soda, then dust with ground lily root so sleeves pulled up during music reveal wrists pale as moonrise. Some accelerate pallor by drinking quintessence of pearl, actually a suspension of calcium and arsenic tincture, guaranteed to cloud the blood until lips turn faintly violet. If they sip too much, they faint. Fainting is fashionable. It proves you have leisure to lie unconscious on velvet cushions while servants fetch smelling salts. No field worker collapses gracefully. Only nobility swoons with style. Medical pamphlets appear warning of leprosy of vanity, describing faces collapsed, eyesight lost. But pamphlets cannot outrun desperation to fit a mold hammered by court painters. Portraitists themselves are complicit. They adore white ground because pigments sit brighter upon it. A flush dab requires less vermilion when the underlying board is lead white paste. So paint and painter collaborate. One covers blemishes, the other immortalizes perfection. Centuries later, museum goers stare at these portraits, wondering why their expressions are so still. They do not realize every smile risked breaking the precious mask. In private, some ladies test alternatives. Powdered rice flour imported from Nagasaki, chalk blended with goat's milk, even mashed river pearls. None match Sarusa's flat perfection, so frustration drives them back to poison. The queen herself, whispers say, refuses to appear at dawn because sunlight shows fissures in the mask. She grants audience only after midday, when chambers are draped, candles lit so shadows blur cracks. If the sovereign bows to white death, who are lesser ladies to resist? Fashion becomes faith, and like most faiths, it promises salvation later while demanding sacrifice now. But a pallid canvas needs hair and brows to frame it. And here the weirdness broadens, the high forehead mania. In French and English courts, plucking hairline upward an inch signals intellect. The more dome you display, the more people assume you recite Virgil for breakfast. So evening grooming involves yanking rows of hair with silver tweezers until scalp shines. Occasionally blood dots the area. A dab of alum powder clots it. Lead paint hides it. Overplucked forehead meets mercury-painted brow arch formed with soot and wine. Two contrasting toxins tracing the idea of a face. Eyes must glitter. Lacking mascara, they rely on drops brewed from belladonna leaves. One drop dilates pupils into dark pools, a look artists call doe-eyed. Side effect, blurred vision, hallucinations, heartbeat races like lute strings. Some ladies mistake servants for demons, faint again, need smelling salts. But results in candlelight are spectacular. Pupils devour color, leaving iris wide black map to nowhere. So they endure headache, chase illusions of spiders weaving garlands in air. Beauty that costs nothing gains nothing. Between events, skin tries to heal. Physicians of progressive bent suggest night masks concocted from donkey milk and honey. The mixture soothes and may slow lead absorption. But common rumor claims donkey milk attracts fairies who tangle your dreams. To guarantee safety, you tie a red ribbon round left ankle before sleep. If you wake to new tangles in your hair, that means the fairies visited and found you interesting. A mark of hothouse charm desirable at next court dinner. Even music adapts. Lutenists compose Alba della Donna Bianca, a melody slow and aching, performed while ladies' maids layer cerusa. The song's low drones mask wheeze of asthmatic servants grinding lead upstairs. Pain and art hold hands. Scientific murmurings eventually reach ear of king's physician. He tests skin scrapings, notes heavy metal lines in hair shafts, publishes pamphlet on the corrupting nature of cerusa, begs ban. But economy fights back. Lead mines supply metals for pewter plates, musket balls, stained glass. Condemning lead means disrupting trade, wages, war. Crown shelves proposal. Fashion wins another generation. Behind closed doors, some daring thinkers imagine alternative. Egg white glaze gives temporary sheen without poison, though it cracks if face moves. Another proposes thin veil of silk dyed pale, worn over skin like second face. But whispers maintain men wish to kiss cheeks, not fabric. Practical inventions falter under romance. So the dance continues. Noblewomen, their maids, their physicians, their suitors, all orbit the white sun of cerusa. Some outlive the mask, retiring to countryside after teeth drop, faces sagging like melted candles. They paint less often, spend afternoons in shade reading psalms, wonder why joints flare and memory slips, never fully blaming youthful jars of milky doom. Others die young, funerals closed casket because mortician cannot mask final ravages. Gray skin stippled with blue lead sulfur flecks, eyes sunken, lips split. Eulogies praise their radiance. The irony, men at court gradually tire of marble statues. Whispers arise praising natural bloom. Poets describe shepherdesses with rosy cheeks. But by then, the ladies are trapped. Complexion tied to dowry negotiations and alliances. Power glued to pallor. To abandon one means risking the other. Individual rebellion would stick out like a berry stain on snow. Yet seeds of change germinate. A duchess secretly employs oatmeal paste. Rumors call her the porridge beauty. Another invests in Spanish wool rouge for warmer undertone rather than corpse pallor. A physician tests bismuth subnitrate as safer whitening agent. Progress inches while lead jars slowly empty. Stories travel too. One about Japanese court where noblewomen blacken teeth to contrast powdered faces, seeing decay as beautiful mystery. Court ladies gasp at notion, yet can't forget it. Perhaps beauty is merely agreement by majority. Change the covenant, change the cost. Night grows deep in manor corridors. Lead mask set on dressing stand glimmers faintly. Upholstered chair holds tomorrow's gown, slashed sleeves to reveal ghost arms. Downstairs, servants snuff candles, leaving hall in gloom. Lady sleeps propped on satin pillow so paint doesn't smear. In dreams, she walks meadow, untouched by sun, her skin luminous, breaths easy, no fumes, no tremors. Dawn will peel dream away like vinegar cloth. But for these hours she is both flawless and free, somewhere between fantasy and leaden truth. And that, dear listener struggling toward sleep, is the first thread in the tapestry of bizarre noble beauty. A kingdom where poison masquerades as pearl, where whiteness is wealth, and where silent servants count the hidden cost in coughs. If you're ready to wander deeper into hairline plucking, eyebrow mice pelts, and scented gloves tanned in urine, just let me know, and we'll keep the candles burning for Part 2. Shall we continue? Part 2. Moonlight seeps between warped shutters and slides across embroidered bed curtains, illuminating the next ritual already arranged on a walnut table. A finger-length strip of vellum, a pair of silver tweezers honed to needle points, a lacquered box that smells faintly of camphor and musk, and, most unsettling of all, a tiny, tawny mouse lying still as though it dreams beneath its fur. The lady stirs before cock-crow, stiff-necked from sleeping upright to save yesterday's mask, and signals her maid with a languid tap of the finger. The maid lifts the velvet valance, sets a taper to the hearth, and the preparations for another day's worth of self-transformation grind awake like millstones. Hair first, always hair, but in reverse of nature. Tonight's goal is not luxuriance, but subtraction. Courtiers whisper that a high forehead is the amphitheater of intellect. The wider the stage, the brighter the mind that plays upon it. Pain makes geniuses, apparently, because expanding that stage means raising the curtain by fringe by fringe. The lady's maid uncaps a stoppered vial of almond oil mingled with rue and thyme, soothing draught for the skin once the violence is done. But softness comes last. Tweezers come now. She kneels, braces an elbow upon brocade, and begins the harvest. Pluck, 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 each root surrendering with a snap like breaking thread. The first row vanishes quickly, then the second. Soon the hairline retreats a full thumb's breadth. Beneath each eviction, a pinpoint drop of blood beads, but a dab of hare's foot powder staunches the revolt. They work by rhythm, in time with the pendulum clock, 10 pulls to each side, then pause so the lady can swallow a wince and sip cordial laced with poppy seed. If a stubborn follicle refuses, the maid reaches for her secret weapon, a smear of quicklime paste mixed with wood ash. Spread it onto the recalcitrant patch, wait until the skin tingles, first cool, then burns, then blister sings. Wipe away together with the compromised stubble. Sometimes flesh lifts too, but a drop of wine vinegar tightens it back down. The scar will sit beneath the next week's layer of serosa unremarked.
At last, the maid massages in the rue almond unguent, and the lady sits back, forehead gleaming and impossibly tall, like a marble amphora upended.
Now the eyebrows, those thin pen strokes that must hover, delicate yet emphatic, exactly one falcon's feather above the lids. To sculpt them, you first erase their natural form. Boiled walnut husk darkens the arch. Then pumice stone thins it to a faint outline. Finally, a damp cloth rubs away the residue, leaving almost nothing. Onto this near blank parchment comes the star of tonight's play, the mouse pelt.
Raised for the purpose, fed on saffron crumbs and barley so its fur grows extra fine, the mouse was dispatched by the groom of the chamber early evening, mercy via lavender oil soporific, or so he claimed. Its little coat, soft as breath, has been cured in alum salt and brushed until it shines. The maid trims it into 2 slender crescents, each tapered like a falcon's wing. Warm beeswax, fragrant with a whisper of rosewood, acts as adhesive. She presses 1 strip onto the lady's brow ridge, then the twin, tilting them upward at the outer edge. Immediately the face changes. Eyes appear wider, expression perpetually intrigued, daring even. There is an art to selecting pelts. A cinnamon-hued mouse makes brows that glow under torchlight. A black one suits morning dress or Spanish court fashion. White mice are prized for winter masks, where pale upon pale achieves spectral elegance. Rumor speaks of a duchess in Savoy who plucked not just brows, but lashes as well, replacing them with silver-dyed weasel hair for a gaze like frozen lightning. She blinked rarely. Glue might fail.
The mouse brow hazard is mostly social. If heat from dancing loosens the wax, gravity may send one eyebrow sailing south like a lost feather. Thus, noblewomen carry lace handkerchiefs not only for tears, but for emergency salvage. Press, pat, reposition, smile. The men will think you merely perfumed your wrist.
With forehead and brows remapped, attention sinks to hair fragrant with last night's pomade of bear grease and jasmine. But grease dulls, courts crave shimmer. Enter the leaded comb, a fine-toothed silver implement coated in litharge of lead soaked in vinegar. 30 strokes nightly deposit infinitesimal lead crystals along each strand, muting dark hues into a fashionable dull gold. Over months, hair thins, splits, sometimes departs altogether. For sudden bald patches, a velvet coif sewn with a dozen dormouse tails creates the illusion of playful curls. One mustn't stop the dance simply because the music costs part of the violin. Gloves come next, the whispering theater of hands, those pale birds that flick fans, accept goblets, deliver secret notes. Supple kid leather is not enough. It must exude paradise. The tanner begins by soaking raw hides in stale urine mixed with quicklime to strip remaining flesh. Then repeated rinses in orris root broth sweeten the pelt. Finally, the nearly finished gloves bathe in a stew of civet musk, crushed amber, and a dram of rose water. They emerge reeking of morning gardens, but the odor of ammonia lingers beneath, a feral tang hinting at the cost. Ladies turn the inside seams out, dust them with starch perfumed in lavender, so hands do not absorb the urine ghosts. Yet, such gloves serve more than fragrance. When drawn on, they press arsenic-laced powder into skin to bleach the knuckles. The recipe, equal parts starch, powdered white arsenic, and ground pearl, is hidden in a silver shaker labeled innocently bouquet. Every curtsy leaves a faint film on gowns. Every handshake a trace along a suitor's sleeve. Some gentlemen develop red welts. Blame is placed on cheap dyes, never on beauty.
Scent extends to the mouth. Cloves and cinnamon mask breath tinged by churning stomachs unsettled from arsenic tonics. A single clove pinned to the tongue during conversation hides the metal tang seeping up the throat. If diners notice blood spotting the napkin when a lady dabs her lips, they assume a careless bite of pigeon bone. She knows the real culprit: gums retreating like soldiers from a lost cause.
Eyes still require finishing. Sweat may have washed away last evening's belladonna sparkle. The maid produces a crystal dropper, taps a single bead into each eye. Pupils bloom like dark peonies. Vision blurs. Candles smear into halos. The world softens, maybe because the heart is pounding so loudly it drowns details. She steadies herself against the bedpost until dizziness fades to a manageable tremor. Now the gaze is all liquid mystery, a siren call across banquet tables.
While the mistress recovers focus, the maid addresses the neck. Court gossip fixates on the dreaded Venus rings, faint horizontal creases that betray age even beneath a mask. Remedy? Swan fat ointment mixed with ground ivory. At dusk, ointment slathers throat, then linen strip binds snug like a second skin until dawn. Itches suffocate slightly, but morning reveals flesh puffed, rings smoothed, at least for hours. Breakfast arrives on a pewter tray: thin barley broth, sugared almonds, and a chalice of cordial water. Within the cordial, distilled dew collected at midsummer and fortified with spirits of nitre, basically diluted nitric acid. It claims to brighten complexion from inside, but flays stomach lining quietly. The lady sips, wincing. Pain is familiar. After grooming, wardrobe. Bodice pads stuffed with lamb's wool soaked in white vinegar press upward against already compressed ribs, forcing posture regal. Another hazard of fashion, a countess who coughed mid-mask and cracked 2 ribs because corset bones refused to yield. She danced the pavane despite. Gossip crowned her iron-willed. At mid-morning, a barber surgeon arrives bearing leeches in glass vials nestled in damp moss. Today's regimen requires application to temples to relieve congestion of the humors that leads to blotchy cheeks. The tiny vampires latch quickly. A docile hush steals over the room. When removed, they leave rivulets snaking down jaw, promptly staunched with sponge steeped in wine. Ironically, the pale aftermath fulfills beauty's diktat. She feels dizzy again, but paleness glows. Still, freckles threaten. They sneaked back like rebels during the night. The answer? Paint an invisible net across skin using mixture of vinegar and alum called the gossamer. Sunlight refracts through the dried lattice and, allegedly, cannot penetrate. Also cannot supply vitamin or warmth, but what of that? Speaking of sun, outdoor strolls require a mask of diesel-smelling cloth called the safeguard. 2 eye slits, else the world disappears. In winter no one objects, in summer it bakes. Some ladies faint before midday. Again, fainting is fashionable, as long as someone elegant catches you. Letters from Paris bring news of a new craze: papillon patches, tiny silk butterflies glued over pox scars. They're whimsy delights. Soon English ladies adopt them, though theirs are star-shaped to echo empire. Under candle glow, patches flicker, drawing attention to flaws while pretending to disguise them. Paradox makes them modern. Rumors, too, of Spanish flies ground into love potions that redden cheeks by inflaming blood. Overdose causes blistering and lethal retention of urine. Yet apothecaries sell out monthly. Passion outranks caution. Late afternoon, A courier presents a small vial, oil of vitriol, tempered. Allegedly new preventive for facial hair, the plague of every aging beauty. Directions: swipe gently across upper lip nightly. Stinging means it works. The acid burns follicles dead. Failure to shave again seems worth flesh soreness. Already some nostrils have collapsed inward from repeated acid. Whispers call it the widow's smile. But those widows keep receiving invitations, so price remains. Evening again. Another banquet, another fresh layer of paint. But tonight, mask must withstand hours of dancing. So maid adds egg white glaze over lead, forming crack-resistant shell. Movement restricted, laughing riskier. She practices nodding precisely 10 degrees, enough politeness, no fractures.
In the hall, torches spit smoke, mingling with perfume to fog the air. Musicians strike up a galliard. She dances lightly, though inside ribs protest tight lacing. Belladonna dilates heart, and eggshell mask sweats, threatening to slide. She whispers to partner about poetry, hides panic beneath fan. Mid-dance, a rival's brow pelt loosens, flipping down like a caterpillar on wine goblet. Gasps, muffled laughter. The rival flees. Our lady feels triumphant until sudden vertigo reminds her. Victory small, cost cumulative. She steadies, sips clove-spiced wine, tastes metal. Near midnight she retreats, aided by maid. Back in chamber, lenses of orbit ache. Removal commences. Vinegar milk compress, merciless cloth, tears. Each swipe reveals mottled truth. Rash along jaw, scabs near temples, purple leech bruises faintly greening. Maid sighs but prepares night balm of goose fat and honey. Lady peers into mirror, sees stranger, blank patchwork of harm. But by dawn the mirror will show marble goddess once more. It always does, as long as breath remains. She wonders, could there be another way? Minstrels from Scandinavia sang of flaxseed creams, sun-kissed cheeks admired. Scholars from Padua mentioned Galen's warning on lead. Yet tomorrow's court expects the moon. So candle snuffed, she drifts, half dreaming of wheat fields, unpainted laughter, freckles free. The dream fades with first hint of dawn. Maid readies tweezers. The cycle secures itself again like whalebone stays. If you're still curious about tooth-blackening elixirs, about the secret language of beauty patches, about how eau de toilette once marinated in corpse flowers, tell me, and we shall open yet another poisoned locket in Part 3. Shall we continue? Part 3. Candle smoke still coils along the carved rafters, refusing to die with the embers, and the chamber smells of roses cut too long ago, sweetness fermenting into something faintly rank, like secrets left in a warm drawer. An hour past midnight, the castle is as silent as a sewing needle drifting through cloth. Yet in the eastern apartments, a different sort of stitching has already begun. This one with steel files over enamel, threads of silk soaked in myrrh, and the steady hush of a pumice block skating across naked skin. Beauty for the noblewoman is a tapestry rewoven nightly. Unravel one strand and the entire pattern frays, so she labors where no one sees, darning herself back together before dawn exposes a single loose knot. The maid sets a sliver of beeswax taper in the iron sconce. Its flame spits once, catches, and paints the dressing table gold. First comes the mouth, because a smile, the courtly physicians insist, must never betray the rot tenderly blooming beneath. The lady swirls a ceramic cup of warm wine mixed with powdered sage and a hint of orpiment. She swishes, gargles, spits. The mixture burns, strips the tongue of yesterday's clove numbness, leaves behind a raw metallic zing. Immediately she fits between her teeth a slender file of rough-cut ivory scored with grooves. Slowly, rhythmically, she draws it along the top incisors, removing microscopic layers of enamel stained by ale, berries, or whispered gossip. Each scrape sets her teeth on edge with a sound like distant chalk. But white is not enough. White is merely canvas. True nobility reveals itself in what the Japanese courtier centuries later will call ohaguro, but what today's European maskers dub nightshade's kiss, the art of blackening teeth to contrast ghostly skin. A pot of iron filings rests on the table, soaked for weeks in vinegar until the acid gnaws metal into a ferric soup. To this, the alchemist added crushed galls and honeyed licorice for viscosity, plus a drop of lampblack for depth. The maid stirs the tarry liquid with a goose quill, then paints it over each tooth in thin sweeps. Iron-laced stain seeps into minuscule cracks, sets into a lacquer that flashes jet when the lady smiles. Jarring against her milk face, yes, but fashion is built on imbalance. Some say the practice began with Moorish envoys whose blackened teeth suggested exotic spices and uncharted nights. Others claim it hides decay by turning every tooth the same deliberate shade. Either way, a dark grin implies mystery and control, and those two things bracelet a woman better than pearls. While the lacquer dries, attention turns to scent, less the perfume she will wear outwardly, more the deodorization of what must never be smelled. Armpits first. She lifts each arm, revealing skin reddened by yesterday's pumice. The maid applies a paste of alum, powdered rose leaves, and the ash of burnt lemons, known as angel's hush. This astringent seals pores, damming sweat so it retreats inward, occasionally flooding joints with apathy. Physicians warn that retained humors breed melancholia, but melancholia pairs nicely with Baroque gowns. It draws poets the way light draws moths. Beneath the bodice, there is another battlefield. The corset's whalebone stays have bruised her ribcage into twin purple crescents. To numb pain, the maid taps a small jar of unrefined opium laced with goose grease onto the marks. The relief is real, but so is the dependency. A creeping hunger that will demand stronger doses next winter, when the bruises deepen to blue. Yet, if the lady loosens her laces, whispers will bloom faster than any bruise. She once saw a baroness slandered for a mere sag in silhouette. Her invitations disappeared like birds before frost. Now the nails. Courtly hands must gleam like porcelain figurines, fingertips tapered to suggest gentleness that can still sign a death warrant with dainty flourish. Warm milk infused with slivered garlic softens keratin. Then the maid shapes each nail into a half moon, using a blade slender as a sparrow's beak. To bleach any yellowing, she rubs in a paste of distilled urine and alum, harsh but effective. Finally, she dusts the nails with crushed mother-of-pearl, sealing the shimmer by passing each fingertip through candle flame, so quick the polish sets, but skin only smarts. Tiny sacrifices add up to a facade that dazzles in torchlight, where flaws hide behind flicker. Further down, ankles. Rarely seen except when dancing, but the possibility of reveal demands perfection. She perches one foot on a velvet stool. The maid applies leech saliva, prized for its anticoagulant property, to veins that threaten to rise. Then she winds a ribbon steeped in witch hazel to compress them flat, leaving it until foot flesh tingles.
Beauty's geometry requires no unintended contours.
Time to address the most fickle canvas. Yesterday's blunt-ended fan conversation left stress blotches. The barber surgeon recommended a bloodletting, but the lady opts for a subtler purge. She bites into a fig stuffed with powdered hair liver, an old folk remedy believed to draw heat downward. Whether medicine or myth, the ritual comforts her. But color must return in controlled measure. Too pale and she's a specter. Too flush and tongues wag about pregnancy or intemperate passions. She selects a small pot of Spanish wool, fabric soaked in cochineal dye mixed with alum. Dab, blend, until a sunset glows across high cheekbones. Then she overtints deliberately because the next step will mute it. From a lacquered coffin box, the maid unveils a wafer-thin sheet of lead foil, cerussa in its most luxurious form. She folds it into a fan and gently swipes it across both cheeks, depositing a faint white haze that dims the red to a bloom glimpsed through morning fog. This layering illusion, red beneath white, mimics young girls skittering after play, their first flush peeking through winter pallor. The court adores whatever suggests innocence, even if fashioned by poison. A footman knocks, announcing dawn's earliest bell. There remains hair for the rest of the body. Noblewomen cannot admit they share mammalian traits with dairymaids, so limbs must be pristine. Last night she slept with depilatory plaster on calves, quicklime, arsenic sulfide, and goat tallow. The maid peels it off in long strips. Hair follicles come away like wheat pulled by sickle. The skin underneath is raw, welted. She soothes it with chilled wine dregs and grated cucumber. By the time stockings slide up, the sting dulls to a hum. The stockings themselves are silk, tinted pale green. Fashion decrees color block legs are ravishing. Their garters tie above charred welts. She does not flinch. Now, fragrance to project virtue over vinegar-laced sweat. She owns 4 pomanders, one shaped like a pomegranate, studded with cloves, another an enameled skull for Ash Wednesday's meditation, a third gilded sphere that unscrews to reveal segments like orange slices, each filled with musk, ambergris, or crushed marjoram. The last, a simple amber carved heart given by a childhood friend long married off. Tonight, she chooses the gilded sphere for complexity. The maid hangs it from a chatelaine chain at her waist, where heat from movements will waft scent upward beneath skirts, the invisible entourage. Gown selection follows careful calculus. Which ambassador will attend, which rivals will circle, what rumors need quelling. A daring neckline suggests confidence, draws eyes away from faint jaw scarring. A high collar hides but invites whispers. Tonight she selects midnight blue velvet paneled with black silk, the colors of depth, swallowing lamp glow like an eclipse. The stiffened bodice interior is brushed with powdered orchid root to keep skin cool under velvet. Orchid root plus a trace of arsenic for bleaching as she perspires. The skirt layers are hooped with willow wands, light enough to dance, yet wide enough to command space, like unfurled wings telling courtiers this patch of floor is hers. Before leaving chamber, she performs the mirror ritual. 3 mirrors stand angled to show every vantage. She rotates slowly, scanning for cracks in egg-white glaze, stray hairs, smudged brow pelts. Satisfied, she lowers a lace veil, dyed pale lilac, nearly invisible, over her face. Insurance against candle smoke settling on lead. To observers, it looks merely coquettish, a game of hide-and-seek behind gauze. Corridor air feels cooler, torches flicker under her passage. The maid shadows her steps, clutching emergency kit. Beeswax, spare eyebrow strips, vial of essence of pepper to revive if fainting. They reach the grand hall where trumpets test their throats. Guests dribble in, footmen align like chess pieces. Her arrival triggers the murmuration. Heads tilt, fans flutter, hierarchies shiver. She glides to dais, greets Duchess with kiss that leaves trace of iron oxide on glove. Duchess hides momentary confusion behind civet-scented laughter. Dinner service unveils another gauntlet. Soups steam, but steam threatens face. So she leans back, sipping from spoon held at fan's width distance. Meat course, gamey venison marinated in vinegar, demands redder lips. She excuses herself to side niche, where maid reapplies vermilion mixed with beeswax. The pigment contains mercury sulfide. She learned to keep small lumps of lard encased in beeswax behind rings. If mercury burns crater in lip, dab lard to cool. Tonight, no mishap. Lips gleam like fresh wounds, perfect counterpart to black teeth. Across table, a lord previously disinterested now studies her mouth as though reading prophecy. She lowers gaze, lifts fan, radiates availability precisely calibrated to his status. Enough to intrigue, not enough to promise. A strategic yawn reveals razor-pale inner wrists. They, too, were scoured with sugar and lemon until skin thinned translucent. After feasting, musicians strike a l'amande. She dances with rival's brother. Sweat collects under wig line. The maid, hiding among wallflowers, sees droplet streak lead on temple. At first opportunity, they withdraw to antechamber. Maid dries area with linen, repaints with cerussa powder kept in hollow pomander segment. Crisis averted. Later, chambers swirl with post-dance languor. She retreats to balcony, inhales cool air freed from perfume cloud. For a moment, she imagines letting moon cleanse paint, letting hairline grow natural fringe. But below, a page races with rumor. Queen's new favorite arrived from Navarre, famed for complexion like alabaster kissed by snow. Competition thickens. She tightens grip on balustrade. Midnight wanes. She bids farewells, each curtsy measured. Back in chamber, disassembly begins again, but slower. Tonight's removal employs fresh innovation. Bread soaked in ewe's milk, then dried into spongy patty, used to blot lead. Bread absorbs paint, milk's lactic acid softens. Still, cheeks beneath look mottled, veins creeping like blue ivy. She will schedule another leeching at dawn. As maid peels brow pelts, tiny scabs tear. New ones must be procured tomorrow. She instructs groom to fetch mice fed on figs for glossier fur. The maid nods, though her eyes flicker with pity before lids shutter polite. Finally, the lady drinks posset of warm ale, nutmeg, and crushed valerian to coax sleep past throbbing temples. She seats herself against padded headboard, for she cannot risk sweat deforming complexion by pressing face into pillow. Through half-lidded gaze, she watches dawn steal amber from horizon. The last thought before sleep. Someday fashions may shift, and perhaps scholars will denounce lead, mercury, arsenic. Perhaps natural complexions will return. But fashions spin like fortune's wheel. Until then, she will chase the spoke that lifts her. Never mind the grind below. Behind her eyelids, a question stirs. If beauty is power borrowed from pain, can it ever be owned? But the thought dissolves into dreamless dark. Our chronicle of concoctions is far from finished. The apothecary shelves run deep. The ledger of remedies longer than any chapel nave. We have yet to explore the role of beetles crushed into hair dye, of frog spawn masks, of pearl dust inhaled for voice clarity. If curiosity still pulls at your sleeve, we shall lift the next curtain in Part 4. Shall we continue? Part 4. Moonlight has barely slid off the mullioned panes when the fragrance of singed feathers creeps down the western hallway, coil thin, tentative, like a spy uncertain of its orders. An hour earlier, a boy was sent to the dovecote with a silver basin, returning with 2 plump birds, their throats swiftly cut so their warm blood could be whisked into a paste with fresh snow, camphor, and pulverized pearls. That mixture now sits in a porcelain dish shaped like a swan, its rim chipped from some forgotten quarrel, waiting to play its brief, brutal role in the quest for flawlessness. Because faces, as every noblewoman knows, are never merely faces. They are treaties, dowries, declarations of war, and the smallest imperfection can sabotage an entire household more efficiently than an army of pikemen. The lady takes her seat before a mirror framed in gilt mermaids whose tails glint like shards of a drowned sun. Her maid, sleeves rolled, paints 2 stripes of the pigeon blood snow along the lady's jawline, then smooths the concoction upward in patient strokes. The blood's warmth coaxes capillaries toward the surface, while the pearl powder's calcium salts abrade the topmost layer of skin. In theory, the snow should cool, but the face beneath flushes scarlet, deliberate irritation that will later be tamed into a controlled bloom. Not all courts approve of this recipe. In Milan, diplomats claim it awakens the red devil of apoplexy. Yet the Spanish envoy's wife swears by it, and fashion obeys novelty more than reason. While the mask sets, a second regimen begins, the purification of eyebrows. The current vogue demands arches thin as falcon quills, positioned high to give an air of perpetual intrigue. But hair, like rumor, refuses easy eviction. To tame it, the maid uncorks a phial of walnut oil steeped with nightshade leaves and quicklime. A drop placed on the edge of a feather, then traced along the brow's lower border, scalds follicles into surrender. When the burning eases, the maid wipes away both oil and loosened hairs with a swatch of nettle fiber cloth, leaving a clean canvas ready for artistic deceit. 2 mouse fur pellicles, dyed raven with elderberry ink, are pressed into the sticky residue, instantly elevating the lady's gaze into the realm of calculated surprise. Below, lashes receive their own ceremony. A coal brazier warms a slender brass spoon until it glows the faint orange of sunrise. The lady closes one eye. The maid hooks the heated metal beneath the lashes, presses, holds, releases. A primitive lash curler. The smell of singed keratin mingles with clove fumes. Immediately afterwards, a mixture of gum arabic and lampblack is painted on with a hedgehog quill, turning the lashes glossy obsidian and freezing their new crescent shape. Should any stray fleck land on the cornea, vision clouds for hours, but fashion is a blinding pursuit in every sense. The pigeon blood mask is now congealed. With slow circular strokes, the maid scrubs it away using a pad of raw silk dusted with alum and rye flour. The revealed complexion gleams like wet porcelain, mottled but radiant. Into that fragile brightness she rubs a preparation of ground alabaster mixed with arsenic trioxide. Venetian veil, they call it, because it cloaks mortal skin in an illusion of ethereal pallor. Physicians mutter that arsenic dries organs to parchment, yet their warnings drown beneath the applause of ballrooms. A smear of honey follows, locking in the powder, and against the honey's tack the maid presses rice paper sheets marbled with saffron veins.
They adhere, dry, then are peeled away, lifting any lingering coarseness. The result is skin too smooth to belong to the living, and that is precisely the point. Mortality undermines mystique. There is no respite, because hair, glorious, fickle hair, demands its tribunal next. Current court gossip idolizes locks the color of barley at sunrise, an uncomfortable fact for a lady born with tresses black as ink. Decolorization is achieved through repeated anointments of lye water, chamomile infusion, and, shockingly, stale horse urine. It's ammonia prized for stripping pigment. Tonight, however, the bleaching has succeeded as far as its cankerous chemistry allows. So attention turns to luster. The maid unrolls a length of raw silk dampened in vinegar and goose fat, winds it around a lock, and begins to pull, squeezing oil along the shaft until each strand drinks shine. Residual odor is masked with rose attar and a single drop of civet to ground the sweetness, because the noses of courtiers are fine-tuned for pretense and will detect falseness faster than most priests detect sin. But beauty does not end at skin. It must emanate from breath, fragrant enough to sanctify any confidences whispered across chessboards. A silver tongue scraper, shaped like a serpent eating its tail, scrapes away the white film of sleep from the lady's tongue. Next comes a pastille of mastic gum, cardamom, and powdered deer horn, chewed until soft, then pressed against the palate where heat releases perfume with every word. Should conversation last past midnight, the gum will be discreetly swallowed. Its resin believed to calm nerves and, rumor claims, prevent conception, though how is anyone's guess.
With face and hair momentarily appeased, the maid kneels to address an unspoken shame: cracked heels. Silk slippers hide many failings, but a single stumble during a galliard can reveal a heel fissure deep enough to shock even seasoned courtiers. The remedy is unpleasant yet swift. She uncovers a small gourd containing a writhing mass of waxworms marinated in warm goat milk. One worm is plucked, snipped at both ends, and its viscous entrails squeezed onto the heel. Enzymes dissolve calluses faster than pumice. Then the area is wrapped in lambskin while the lady rehearses witty barbs against potential rivals.
Meanwhile, elsewhere in the palace, her chief competitor, the Margravine of Ostfriesland, prepares her own arsenal: a ruby dust lip balm and a decoction of crushed emerald for eye drops. Emerald, ground fine as flour, suspended in vinegar, and diluted with morning dew, supposedly clarifies the whites of eyes until they shine like frost. It also abrades the cornea, creating micro tears that blur vision. The Margravine will spend the night half blind, leaning heavily on whichever suitor wins the privilege of escort. The lady's maid whispers this intelligence while massaging worm enzymes into the heel. My mistress, blind beauties lean, you, however, shall glide. The lady smiles, teeth ebony under candlelight, and decides emerald folly will not infect her. The worm ritual ends. Lambskin is removed. Heel skin sloughs away like parchment dipped in water. Fresh, rosy flesh peeks through. She steps gingerly into stockings woven with silver thread to reflect hearthlight through gown slits, creating illusions of electricity that hasn't been invented yet. Court summons drum through corridors. The Prince-Elector has arrived ahead of schedule. The lady must descend sooner than planned. Emergency measure: a flask of Bishop's Flight, powdered caffeine from rare Ethiopian beans mixed with sugared violet petals. She snuffs a pinch into each nostril. Focus brightens, pupils widen, giving irises a nightcat sheen.
Alertness is required now because rivalries sharpen whenever new men of influence present themselves.
Yet poison also requires caution. Lead on cheeks, arsenic on skin, mercury in lip color. They interact unpredictably. Earlier, a countess collapsed mid-minuet, her face veined green where copper salts in her eyeshadow reacted with sweat. The noble circles are learning to watch for such betrayals. A drooping eyelid, a tremor in the hand, forgetting a cousin's name. Signs that beauty is devouring its steward. To guard against that fate, the lady drinks daily from a chalice lined with powdered bezoar stone, believed to neutralize toxins. Whether superstition or not, she trusts ritual as soldiers trust armor.
Down the marble stair she sweeps, every candle along wall sconces seeming to lean into her slipstream. At the vestibule threshold she pauses. The Prince-Elector stands among courtiers like a falcon tethered too long, restless, regal. Their eyes meet. She lowers hers precisely 3 breaths, then tilts head so jazzed candlelight strikes cheekbones at the angle painters call mercy. Black-stained teeth glint. He approaches.
Conversation begins with politeness, weather, harvest prospects. She moves fan just enough that fragrance from pomander mixes with his cologne of pine and myrrh. When he inquires about her unusual dental tint, she answers in Catalan, forcing him to lean closer to catch her words. Proximity disguised as translation necessity. Propriety forbids longer intimacy, so she withdraws to join a tableau of ladies near tapestry depicting Daphne's metamorphosis. Subtle reminder to watching men that pursuit must be careful lest prize transform and vanish. Behind the arras, a secret corridor leads to the alchemist's studio. Rumor holds the alchemist plots with 3 noblewomen to create an elixir granting complexion like starlight without toxicity. Ground opal, dew from graves of unbaptized infants, and crushed firefly abdomen for luminescence. The lady instructs her maid to investigate. If recipe holds promise, she'll acquire monopoly. Yet caution. Anything involving grave dew risks church censure. She's balanced on knife edge, where vanity intersects with politics, and a single misstep could damn not just skin, but soul. Later, games of primero commence. She joins the table wearing gloves to hide arsenic freckles blooming on knuckles. Between deals, she dips fingertips in eau de mélisse to calm tremor from caffeine snuff. A duke remarks on her starry gaze. She feigns ignorance, though inside notes effect of violet petal caffeine synergy. Near dawn, the company disperses. Fatigued faces sag. Rouge streaks down cheeks like melted wax. The lady alone remains luminous. A testament, some think, to inner virtue, not suspecting an arsenal of leeches, poisons, and worms. She accepts final bows, ascends staircase, feeling victory, yet aware victory's cost accrues interest payable in blood or sanity. Back in chamber, maid extinguishes candles one by one. Disrobing reveals faint rash along clavicle. Arsenic overdose? Maid applies paste of mashed figs and white lead. Ironic remedy. They say lead draws out fire. She hopes it draws out death slower than admiration arrives. She lowers onto chaise, too wired for sleep. In moonlit hush, she drafts tomorrow's enhancements. Crushed lapis for halo beneath eyes, batwing ash for hair volume, a cordial of distilled gold flakes to ingest for auric aura. Each idea scribbled with goose quill onto vellum, later to be encrypted in cipher, because beauty secrets sell for ransoms.
A nightjar calls outside. The maid rests kneeling, eyes flickering with worry. She'll endure blame if mistress withers. The lady notices, strokes maid's hair, promises future reward, a bottle of rosemary elixir to keep her youthful when marriageable. Promises are currency, whether paid matters less than made.
Wind rattles casement, extinguishing final taper. Darkness wraps them, yet glow persists from lady's arsenic-polished limbs. She thinks of alchemists chasing philosopher's stone, kings waging wars. All desire distills to longing for permanence. But permanence is myth. She pursues its illusion because illusions move men, men move kingdoms, and kingdoms decide fates of families.
Sleep finally steals her amid silent prayers to Saint Dymphna, patron of mental afflictions, because who but the afflicted smear death upon cheeks to feel alive? Dreams swirl, a ballroom where all dancers wear mirrored masks. She cannot tell which reflection is her own. She wakes sweating, lead powder flaking onto pillow like toxic snow.
Rooster crows. Another day begins, another siege of lotions, plasters, tinctures. The ledger of beauty hacks lengthens. Beetle shell scarab scarlet for nails. Eel fat blended with violets to cream eyelids supple. Powdered silkworm cocoons inhaled to ease coughing caused by mercury fumes. She will test them all, for court never slumbers, and novelty is the only sunrise that matters.
Our exploration is only halfway through the cabinet of curiosities. We have yet to taste the bittersweet bite of belladonna drops widened pupils bring, nor traced the vein-bright paths of leech therapy across a noblewoman's collarbones, nor listened to the hush surrounding powdered mummy flesh used as facial scrub. Continue to part 5, and we will tumble deeper down this perfumed rabbit hole. Shall we proceed?
Part 5. Candles gutter low in the sconce before she stirs, and already the maid is by the hearth, coaxing a flame to life with a bellows carved in the shape of a fish that never swam. Dawn's first whisper has not yet reached the casements, but today's alchemy cannot wait for sunlight. It requires a secrecy that morning often steals. The list the lady scrawled during her restless night lies open on the dressing table, blotches of ink feathered where sweat from her fingertips blurred consonants into wing-shaped stains. Top of the page, belladonna, half drop each eye, only moments before descent. Beneath, leeches for clavicle contour, and further down, a newcomer to her arsenal, pulvis wumia, finest grind, exfoliate, swallow, exalt.
The belladonna stands ready in a vial no larger than a thimble, liquid as dark as grief. Milk of the deadly nightshade, skimmed at moonrise by apothecaries who harvest its berries wearing veils of horsehair so stray pollen will not dilate their own pupils into oblivion. One drop widens the iris enough to drown the startled innocence of childhood in fathomless pools of artificial longing. Too much, and hearts forget their rhythm. The maid steadies her mistress's chin. A glass rod catches a trembling bead. Gravity pulls blackness onto white. Pain lashes behind the eyeball like a silver thorn driven inward. Then vision flares, brightens, halos bloom around every ember in the fireplace. She blinks until tears carry off excess poison.
While the drug settles, 2 leeches the length of violin strings bask in a basin of rainwater brewed with mint to keep them docile. These are no mere bogworms. They arrived in a velvet pouch stitched with gold thread, imported from Transylvania, where rumor insists they feast on the blood of white wolves to heighten their vigor. The maid lifts one with a goosebone tweezers, places it delicately just beneath the lady's collarbone, where a faint swelling betrays last night's indulgence in almond marzipan. The creature's mouth, a triple-jawed rose of razors, puckers, then latches. A second leech finds symmetry on the opposite side. Their slow siphoning will hollow the flesh ever so slightly, carving shadows that make bones seem finer, hunger elegant. The lady reclines, barely breathing, feeling each rhythmic tug as both curse and benediction.
Meanwhile, an iron mortar hosts the next ritual, mummy powder. Genuine or counterfeit hardly matters in a marketplace drunk on exotica. But the dust sold to courts bears the scent of bitumen and cinnamon resin, convincing enough to command a rivulet of gold coins per ounce. Ground again to a flour-soft drift, it is mixed with crumbled myrtle leaves, slivers of lemon peel, and a splash of rose water until it resembles damp sand. The maid takes a marlin bone spatula, scoops the paste, and begins to polish it in minute circles over her mistress's cheeks, forehead, chin. Microcrystals scrape away dead cells. The bitumen binds impurities like charcoal in a brazier. Whether the powder truly contains remnants of an Egyptian queen or the pulverized bones of highway thieves is irrelevant. What matters is the legend, and legends, like perfumes, linger longer than truth.
By the time the leeches grow sluggish with satisfaction, crimson ornaments droop from the lady's neck. Each is coaxed to release with a dab of salt, then returned to their basin for tomorrow's audience with vanity. Blood trickles down in twin lines. The maid catches it on a square of linen, later to be dried, crushed with myrrh, and fashioned into a secret rouge. Nothing wasted when reputation is at stake. An hour hence a physician will call, summoned under pretext of inquiring after the Countess in the eastern wing, but really to deliver small ivory lozenges infused with arsenic trioxide and chalk, cunningly shaped like sugar pearls. Women let them dissolve on the tongue before strolling the hedge maze. The mild poisoning turns cheeks fashionably pale, thoughts unnaturally nimble. Already 2 ladies at court have developed tremors in their left hands. They attribute it to love, not toxins. And the lady takes note to alternate doses with tincture of antimony to avoid suspicion.
There is also the matter of scent. Today's choice, Larmes de Moire, a fragrance distilled from ambergris softened over beeswax, petals of midnight roses, and a singular drop of beaver castoreum for earthy bite. Dabbed where the leech wounds weep, on wrists, behind knees, it mingles with iron tang to create an aroma said to unsettle even seasoned diplomats, nudging them to concessions they later cannot justify. She intends to test that theory upon the Venetian envoy at supper, coaxing an update on the Doge's failing health. Gown selection follows. A storm blue velvet, low of neckline to display the silver-lined hollows newly sculpted by leechwork. Sleeves slashed to reveal chemise of palest lilac. But velvet devours candlelight, so the maid stitches minuscule chips of mica along seams. With each breath, the lady will glimmer as though a constellation chooses to orbit her form.
Yet fabric alone cannot cinch destiny. Enter the corset, whalebone dipped in vinegar then dried over hot coals, tightening as it cools. The maid, braced against wardrobe, pulls laces until vertebrae protest like harp strings tuned beyond pitch. Internal organs shift, lungs compress, waist shrinks a quarter inch. A gasp escapes, but even air is a luxury negotiable when silhouette is on the bargaining table. Now vocal preparation, gargling with diluted aqua vitae and powdered sugar glass to roughen timbre.
lending a fragile, smoky quality that makes listeners lean in. Words delivered in such a voice seem confessional, encouraging confidences to leap gaps propriety would otherwise maintain. Footwear includes insoles sprinkled with powdered yarrow root. Folklore claims it numbs fatigue, permitting long hours of dancing without betraying pain. Whether placebo or charm, belief itself can spur endurance. Over that, shoes embroidered with tiny seed pearls, each pearl punctured and hollowed to lessen weight. She will appear lighter than physics permits. Outside, bells toll terse. The chapel summons, but before devotion she must complete one last audacity. A sip of aurum potabile, drinkable gold. Alchemists achieved it by dissolving leaf gold in aqua regia, then diluting the poison to a shimmer within honey wine. A single swallow reputedly brightens the aura visible to clairvoyance. She downs it, tongue tingling metallic, stomach recoiling. If it kills 1,000 blood cells, let them be the lesser ones. Procession to chapel unfolds. Columns echo with choral chant. Incense drapes rafters. She glides along nave like a swan across black water. Eyes follow the impossible pupils, the resculpted collarbones, the glow of arsenic-polished skin. Petitioners kneel. Some wonder if she is specter or saint. The lady genuflects, lips brushing sapphire rosary beads. Dyed glass, but who would dare question? She prays not for forgiveness. Prayer to her is another negotiation, but for steadiness. That belladonna blur not her reading of glances. That leech wounds stay sealed through vespers. That gold not settle poisonous in her veins before night's intrigues reach their crescendo. Behind her kneels the margravine, eyelids greened by pulverized emerald, eyes glassy with pain. Rumor murmurs she's begun smearing frog bile upon lips for a plague blue tint, considered daring this season. The lady juxtaposes these notes in memory, each weakness catalogued for future use like counters on a gaming board. Service ends, courtiers drift toward refectory. Between tapestries and braziers, political microclimates swirl. Alliances forged in compliments, undone by glances. The Venetian envoy approaches, eyes dilated not by belladonna, but fear. News from home uncertain. She deploys fragrance and half-smile, drawing him into her orbit. Conversation dances from opera to trade tariffs. At mention of his doge's rumored illness, she lets her violet-roughened voice fracture just so, as though sincerity wobbled beneath compassion. He exhales secrets before realizing breath has left him. Throughout meal, plates arrive heaped with spiced venison, quince paste, sugared almonds. She nibbles only candied violets. Arsenic pearls mute appetite, but hunger keeps mind sharp. Across tables sits a physician from Padua, extolling new theoretical medicine, draining melancholy vapors via ear leeches. She files that under possibilities. Ears hidden by veil might conceal such therapy before the next mask. Later, procession to the solar for velvet-cushioned gaming. She passes a side hall where servants ignite torches scented with cedar and orange peel. Sparks flicker, reflecting in her pupils like twin eclipses. A young page trips before her. She steadies him, whispers reassurance. The boy glimpses his reflection in her dark orbs and near swoons, convinced angels swirl there. But danger stalks even triumph. Under the dais, a small dog noses her hem, snarling. Animals sense poisons humans court. She kicks gently. It yelps away, tail between legs. The gesture is noted by a watching dowager. Gossip seeds.
Before midnight, a private audience with the Duke's spymaster, ostensibly about a tapestry commission. In reality, he seeks confirmation of a rumored plot. She leverages her newly gleaned Venetian intelligence, trading fragments for favors. The spymaster will ensure pamphleteers praise her celestial serenity, bury whispers of cruelty to dogs. Quid pro, as always.
Belladonna's window of glory narrows. Pupils begin to pulse pain with each heartbeat. She retreats to powder room, splashes rose water, adds a pinch of ground stag antler to counteract vertigo. Mirror shows veins creeping in sclera, tiny threads of red. Acceptable if candlelight remains low. Dancers assemble for final pavane. She waltzes with Prince Elector, motions fluid despite corset choking breath. Yarrow insoles numb souls, but dull pain cannot hide fatigue. Each spin threatens collapse. She steadies by counting, 3 measures to dace, 2 back, pivot, bow. On concluding chord, she releases his hand precisely as bell tolls matins, a timing suggesting obedience to heaven over flesh. Observers sigh, misreading calculation for virtue. Exiting hall, she crosses cloister where moon stains flagstones silver. Damp air bites. Arsenic-lacquered skin feels brittle. She imagines cracks forming like glaze on old pottery. Sustaining illusion is endless siege. Surrender unthinkable. Yet how long before fortress walls crumble? The thought flickers, snuffed by resolve. Maid awaits beside rose trellis, carrying glass bell jar with a single leech, larger, mottled, rumored to have fed on monks for decades. Emergency supply in case too much blood drained away and new bleeding required to balance humors. She declines. Tonight's victories suffice. Back in chamber, unmaking begins. Corset loosened. Breath floods lungs like rescued sailors clambering ashore. Hair uncoiled. Vinegar-steeped strands break, littering comb with pale wisps, price of barley sunrise. She files them in sachet, annotated for future wig. Belladonna sting lingers. Maid rinses eyes with milk and saffron, though burn persists like memory of affront. Next step, detox. A decoction of milk thistle, ground sapphire, and olive oil forced down throat. She retches. Some splashes gown. No matter. Velvet has served its purpose. On skin's arsenic film, maid spreads paste of charcoal ash and egg white. It draws poison outward, they believe. Whether myth or not, black glaze cools the rash blossoming under clavicle. Leech bites weep. She applies powdered silver nitrate to cauterize, then covers with lace collar for morning audiences. Pain hums, but pain is tutor. Reminds her flesh still subject to mortality. Sharpening will to transcend limitations through alchemy of perception. Before sleep, she updates codex. Notes efficacy of violet caffeine snuff, excellent but watch for heart flutters. Records emerald eyewash weakness, competitor half-blind. And drafts inquiry to discreet trader for Aurora filter, legendary syrup mined from Icelandic lava tubes promising glow sans toxins. Doubtful, yet hope is commodity. Quill Scratch halts. She touches maid's cheek, murmurs gratitude. Loyalty purchased cheaply now may save life later when enemies circle. Window glimmers pre-dawn. She tucks codex beneath floorboard, nestles into linen sheets chilled by winter seep. Eyes drifting amid thought of future marvels. Carmine from cochineal beetles sailed from New Spain. Face masks of electric eel mucilage rumored in Lisbon. Maybe even lightning bottled spirit from philosophers across the sea who harnessed amber's spark.
She will not be left behind. Rest comes, restless as always, but enough to prime next day's inventions. We have plumbed leechcraft, belladonna, mummy dust, yet still await the chilling art of lead-lined gloves, the clandestine blood pearl diet, and the silver nitrate smile that haunts mirrors long after beauty fades. Shall we slip onward into Part 6 and watch these obsessions sharpen until they slice through the very women who wield them? Part 6. Moonlit dust still hangs in the shutter's slats when the next experiment unfolds, and silence in the corridor is fragile as spun glass. Embroidery needles lie forgotten on the window seat, tiny javelins abandoned after last night's councils, but their gleam glances off tin basins the maid has set out in strict formation on the floorboards. Each basin holds water cooled by snow from the parapet, snow that carries the taste of distant pine forests once the crystals melt against the tongue. Snow is important. It slows the poison's burn. The lady sits on a low stool, palms extended, the slightest tremor betraying fatigue from yesterday's arsenic pearls. Today she courts a different metal, lead. Thick cream, pearlescent and heavy, rests in a jar previously used for quince jam. This is Venus Veil, mixed by an Italian cosmetician who speaks of lead white like a lover. Ground ceruse blended with vinegar, olive oil, and a whisper of mercury to keep rot at bay. Applied too often, it blackens skin beneath the surface like bruised parchment, but until that day, it bestows a luminosity no candle can replicate. Lead, however, thirsts for blood calcium. Slowly, it consumes bones from within. To stave off mottling of the fingers, noblewomen have adopted a preventative. Lead-lined gloves worn during sleep so that toxins leach into dead keratin rather than living tissue, or so alchemists claim. Removing them requires ritual, lest flakes scatter and betray the artifice. The maid unlaces the gloves now, fingertip by fingertip, exposing hands as white as unlit tallow candles. Underneath, nails have grown fragile, crescent moons streaked gray. Remedy will come later. She dips each hand into snow-water basins, cooling flesh, coaxing capillaries to retreat so veins will not carry yesterday's lead deeper. 10 heartbeats in the first basin, then transfer to the next and the next like a liturgy. By the final bowl, water clouds into faint milk, a sign of metal washing off. Bowls will be emptied into herb gardens where no one eats from. The rosemary sprigs there grow unnaturally pale, but their scent keeps moths from the linen. Gloves shed, the lady begins breakfast. A single blood pearl, crimson sphere of pressed calf's blood boiled with sugar and cinnamon until congealed, then rolled in powdered gold leaf. Consumed daily, it imparts a flush to cheeks without need for rouge, provided the stomach accepts it. Some women purge within minutes. Those who master the pearls boast of vitality that outshines rivals. She bites delicately. Metallic sweetness coats her tongue. The pearl slips down, leaving warmth that radiates outward, painting roses beneath lead-white foundation. Moments later, her pulse stutters, adjusting to the sudden iron influx, but she rides the wave, steadying on the carved arm of the stool. Next, the silver nitrate smile. Over days, tincture of silver nitrate diluted in vinegar is brushed onto teeth. First, it stains enamel brown, disturbing to behold. But after careful polishing with powdered pumice and stale wine, the surface reflects light like tiny mirrors. Court physicians insist swallowing residue can inflame intestines. Poets insist the glint of such a smile can provoke confessions. She chooses poetry over caution. The maid produces a horsehair brush, dips it into the bottle where liquid glimmers like storm clouds. Each tooth receives its stroke.
Astringent sourness pools at gums. She spits into a porcelain spittoon painted with chubby cherubs. Juxtaposition is delicious. While teeth darken, hair demands discipline. The previous day's vinegar set broke many strands. Fresh locks must appear effortless. Cue Royal Lightning, a lotion of egg whites whipped with a draught of electric eel serum purchased from a Portuguese smuggler who swore his eels were stroked by monks to elicit divine current. Whether or not the serum ever sparked, the proteins seal split ends, leaving hair glossy enough to reflect chandeliers. The maid massages it from root to tip, careful not to drench scalp, then arranges coils into a high tower secured by bone pins carved from walrus tusk. Atop, a tiny cage of filigree silver holds lavender blossoms soaked in rose oil. Warmth from her head will diffuse fragrance as she moves. Letters arrive from night couriers, one wax-sealed with the crest of the Dowager Queen, another bearing only a thumbprint of Cinnabar, Assassin Guild cipher. She breaks the royal seal first, an invitation to intimate supper 2 nights hence, which in court language means interrogation disguised as familial affection. The thumbprint message simply reads, "Beware the frog's tongue, tonight it darts." She pivots possibilities in mind. Frog as symbol of plague, of the rival duchess whose complexion indeed resembles amphibian sheen. No matter, she will respond as always with a new layer of unpredictability. Preparations for day's audiences proceed. She selects a camise dyed palest blue using woad and crushed blackberries, then dusted with starch containing ground lilies said to emit faint luminescence in dark corridors. Over it, a bodice embroidered with thread coated in ground hematite. Under certain torches, the pattern resembles fresh blood spatter, an accessory for conversation. But before clothing encloses her, the maid brings a shallow teak tray where 5 pale slugs writhe around sprigs of thyme. These forest slugs, soaked overnight in cream, excrete a mucus believed to tighten pores. The lady lifts one, grimaces as it adheres to her cheek, dragging cooling slime down jawline. She endures until face gleams slick. Slugs return to tray, cream massaged in. Combined with lead base, it forms an airtight mask, locking poison within and youth without. Hallway clamor swells, pages relaying messages, armor clanking. She emerges, visage unreadable beneath layers. First meeting, Guild of Glassmakers petitioning for exclusive rights to produce mirrored compacts. They present prototypes, mercury-backed glass the size of a child's palm. Observing her reflection, she notes how Belladonna's echo still lingers in eyes though application ceased hours earlier. Good. She negotiates, grants them rights in exchange for a dozen mirrors coated instead with powdered diamond to give softer gaze. They gulp, but agree. Death by royal displeasure costs more than diamonds. Next, a poet seeking patronage recites a sonnet likening her to dawn over plague-ridden fields, life coaxed from rot. Adequate. She grants him a silver coin stippled with holes from gout-ridden mintmaster. The poet will hail even flaws as intentional symbolism. Between audiences, she retreats to garden alcoves, sips cooled raspberry leaf tea to settle stomach roiled by blood pearl. Sunlight creeps between hedges. Though lead protects her complexion from freckles, ultraviolet lament migrates deeper. She unfurls a parasol painted with powdered alum and crushed poppy seed. Legend says it refracts envy directed at the bearer. Back inside, musicians rehearse lute trio.
She signals them to incorporate lower tuning to complement her new smoky voice. They obey. Sound drapes rooms like velvet. Afternoon requires inspection of tapestry depicting Siege of Antioch. She stands beside Steward, eyes lingering on crimson threads. Quietly, she suggests adding a small figure of a woman atop battlements. History's hidden sentinel, she says. Steward nods. She ensures memory inscribes her silhouette even into woven narratives. By dusk, she anticipates the frog-tongue threat. She orders supper in her private parlor, ensures food taster samples each dish thrice. Nevertheless, she prepares antidotes: powdered unicorn horn, narwhal tusk, mixed with honey, and crushed charcoal loaf. Also an emerald ring. Ancient lore posits emeralds shatter when near poison. Stone remains intact. Still, she treads cautiously. The Margravine, she of frog bile lips, arrives unexpectedly with a gift: a small jade figurine of Kuan Yin, goddess of mercy. Mercy is seldom offered freely. Hidden in base, she discovers a note promising alliance if the lady will publicly endorse Margravine's daughter at next music recital. She accepts, scribbles agreement in lemon juice in visible ink, seals figurine inside cedar box dusted with clove oil to mask any trace of duplicity. Night deepens. She removes silver nitrate veneer with cloth soaked in goat's milk, polishes teeth with pulverized cuttlefish bone. Enamel now glints gunmetal. She surveys complexion. Lead has held, but hairline shows faint bluish tint, early sign of lady's veil, toxic halo forming where circulation is weak. She notes to schedule bleeding behind ears with obsidian lancet. Tallow candles sputter. Maid places bowl of water infused with star anise near bed. Scent lulls brainwaves into dream state conducive to strategic visions. Before lying down, the lady opens secret drawer, removes a sealed parchment labeled simply "Tomorrow." Inside, formula for a skin wash using boiled onions, lemon juice, and powdered glass to remove early graying temples. She chuckles. Each remedy spawns its own affliction. Onion reek may undo reputation as scented tempest. Still, she files it under contingencies. She climbs into canopy bed strung with dove feather mattress. Feathers lately tinged gray from lead dust. She makes mental note: new mattress from goose down of geese fed charcoal to bind toxins. She corrects pillow angle to curb arsenic reflux. Drapes left arm outside covers so if midnight convulsions strike, maid may note quickly. Lullaby of distant watch bell tolls. She drifts toward sleep, chased by visions. Herself decades hence, mirror reflecting cracked veneer, powders failing, crowds turning away. But those visions cannot penetrate fortress of present. She has mastered transmutation of fear into allure, self into myth. For now empire bends around her silhouette. The maid extinguishes final candle. In darkness, the lady whispers one word: further. It is both command and vow. We have touched lead's pale mask, the blood pearl glow, the silver nitrate grin. Yet a final night remains, where consequences gather like crows, and beauty's cost must be paid in full. Shall we proceed to Part 7 and watch the veil lift at last? Part 7.
Moonlit dust still lingers across the rafters when the clock, hidden behind gilt lattice, utters its single chime. Half past the last watch, that strange hour when yesterday and tomorrow stand in the same doorway, each pretending not to see the other. Down the gallery, a draught slides beneath arras, puffing the wool threads just enough to make crusader knights in the tapestry seem to breathe. On any other night, the castle would hold its breath with them. Yet at this very moment, corridors are awake with the quietest sort of haste. Velvet-shod feet rushing, gloved hands clasping cloaks shut, muffled instructions darting from ear to trembling ear. Beauty's debts have come due, and every servant able to count the lady's enamel-bright smiles knows instinctively that something sharp has slipped between the old clock's gears. She has risen before dawn because sleep betrayed her, body surging in restless pockets of heat and chill, each pulse announcing a new twinge in bone or joint, lead's patient bill collectors tapping from within. When her bare soles meet the rugs, they feel not pile but frost, though no window stands open. For a breath, she imagines her feet have turned to marble, beautiful and numb, a sculptor's finishing touch. Then sensation flickers back, cruel as pinpricks. Still, she does not call the maid. Instead, she lights a lamp herself, striking flint with the sure, steady rhythm she once used to beat time while learning the cittern. Yellow flame slides across the mirror. Where there should be immaculate pallor, she sees shadows, faint blue-gray riddles at her jawline, a bruise-colored crescent beneath each eye, the delicate web of capillaries rising like ink from wet parchment. She tips her head, notes a brittle glint at the roots of her lashes, crystallized salts leaching through skin. The knowledge lands without alarm. It is not news, only confirmation that the contract she signed with vanity was never meant to be perpetual. Yet even now calculation thrums. In 2 hours she must attend the Dowager Queen's clandestine supper, hastily moved from tomorrow to dawn under pretext of astrological auspice. Such changes shout panic as clearly as trumpets. Whispers must have reached the throne about her lead creams, her blood pearls, perhaps even the Margravine's frog-tongue plots. She will arrive nonetheless, because retreat would invite a hunt. Holding ground, however fragile, is safer than flight when eyes are everywhere. She opens the traveling chest beneath her window seat, a chest too plain for a noblewoman, save that commonness is its disguise. Inside, bundles of linen steeped in vinegar, sachets of crushed calendula, vials of camphor and ammonia, all antidotes in miniature. Atop them, pressed between 2 waxed boards, rests a single sheet of gold leaf bearing a map, her own face rendered in faint pinpricks, charting blemishes past and future. Every spot already treated is pierced. Every spot yet to bloom is circled in pencil. In dim lamplight, the sheet resembles a night sky gone mad, constellations rearranged by someone with shaking hands. She studies the points, then reaches for the calendula sachet and inhales deeply. Earthy, clean, almost forgiving. The moment lingers. Could pure simplicity still undo all the layered sorcery? She answers herself, not tonight. A knock flutters against the door. The maid enters, eyes wide with a news she dare not speak. Her silence says enough. Word has leaked. Perhaps the staff discovered yesterday's basins of milky poison water. Perhaps the girl tending slugs confessed to a confessor. Perhaps the poet spilled a careless metaphor to the wrong patron. The network of gossip is as intricate as the network of veins turning blue beneath the lady's skin. No scolding passes. Instead, the lady requests charcoal paste, goat milk cloths, and a shave brush. The maid sets about work, layering charcoal over cheeks and chin. Charcoal neutralizes lead's surface shine, lending instead a subdued ash finish now fashionable among Iberian widows. A new story births itself. She will present as mourner of an imagined cousin, a grief so fresh it scours color from flesh. Grief is always a socially acceptable sickness, one no physician will dare pronounce illegitimate.
While paste dries, she unwraps a twist of fabric containing 2 leeches, harvested from cathedral crypts, reputed to feed only on holy bodies, and thus purge sin. Carefully she positions them behind her ears, where blood vessels are near. Their mouths latch with pinprick warmth. Leeches are old companions. She learned long ago that each feeding leaves not weakness but clarity, a hush in the skull, as if thoughts were polished glass.
20 minutes later, Leeches grown fat and the charcoal set, she dismisses the maid and dresses herself. Simplicity is weapon tonight. A high-necked gown of raw silk, the color of storm clouds, unadorned save for thin padding at shoulders to keep posture erect. No jewel at throat, only a narrow ribbon dyed with walnut hulls binding a vial of camphor, talisman against fainting fits. At wrists she wears cuffs dusted with fine alum, so that any handshake will feel drying, unsettling, discouraging prolonged contact. In corridor, torches hiss. She walks unaccompanied to Solar, where the glassmaker guild left rejected mirrors. Selecting one, she slides it into a pocket. Mercury-backed, edges unpolished. Tonight it will serve not for reflection, but deflection. Rumor's arrows aimed at her can be redirected if she exposes not her face, but another's distortion. Tool of rhetoric, not vanity. Descending spiral stairs, she passes the steward conferring with guards. They fall silent. She nods, gift of acknowledging both their suspicion and her untouchability. At base of stairs she meets the Margraven's daughter, pale, owl-eyed musician clutching sheet music. The girl whispers thanks for forthcoming endorsement, confides that her mother now doubts alliance is safe, might withdraw. The lady kneels to eye level. Play as if strings are veins full of secrets, she murmurs. The court will bleed to your tune. The girl shivers, half fear, half worship. Another soul netted. Finally, she steps into cloistered courtyard, where dawn's edge bruises the east. Frost brittles herb beds, capturing sage and mint in crystal cocoons. At pergola center stands the Dowager Queen in cloak lined with white fox. 2 physicians hover behind, their presence an accusation of ill health or foul play ready to be proclaimed. The Queen motions the lady closer. No one speaks for 20 heartbeats. Voice in cold air would fracture. Then the Queen says, "Let me see the face that stirs poets." The lady bows, eyes angled downward. Grief has stripped it bare, Majesty. The Queen lifts a finger, tipping the lady's chin. In slanted light, charcoal mask delivers intended illusion. A woman washed by mourning, not cosmetics. Yet the Queen's nostrils flare. She smells the faint vinegar-lead undertone. Physicians step forward, brandishing silver sticks tipped with silk. They request to swab her skin, test for malaise contagion. She consents, but first retrieves the unpolished mirror. "Your Majesties," she says softly, "see for yourselves." She tilts mirror toward them. Mercury glass, slightly warped, returns their own faces tinged sickly, pores magnified, eyes sunken. The Queen recoils, noticing her reflection. Vanity pricks even monarchs. She waves physicians off.
"The air in this courtyard is cursed," she mutters, pulling cloak tighter. "We will speak indoors."
Within chapel antechamber, candles sputter against incense haze. Choir boys rehearse matins beyond screens, their high voices threading through conversation with holy irony. Queen begins gentle interrogation cloaked in condolence. "Grief's pallor aside, rumors wound me," she says. "They say unnatural tonics steal the bloom of youth. They say you bargain with poison and blood to imprison my son's heart." The lady crosses arms, palms hidden to obscure bluish nails. "Beauty's realm is half illusion, half diligence," she replies. "Men fear what they cannot harness. They call discipline sorcery." She lets sentence hang like censer smoke.
A physician younger than rest, eyes bright with scholarly hunger, produces a small glass frog filled with clear fluid. He claims it reacts to lead presence exhaled on breath, darkening accordingly. He asks her to breathe upon it. She agrees, but before doing so, she reaches for the camphor vial at ribbon, unstoppers it, inhales deeply, camphor vapors laden with rosemary oil. Camphor interferes with lead detection chemistry. She discovered that in apothecary texts months ago. Then she exhales steadily onto frog. Nothing happens. Physician frowns, recalibrates suspicion.
Queen seems satisfied for now, but demands sacrifice. "Tonight at Vespers you will approach the altar unpainted, face washed by holy water to demonstrate purity." The lady bows acceptance, already drafting strategy. Holy water from chapel cistern is laced with silver. Contact will blacken lead layers. She needs alternative. Plan forms. Arrange private confession. Request holy water from secluded reliquary kept in brass, not silver. Proceed ceremony by coating face in thin layer of egg white glaze. Protein barrier prevents reaction. Under candlelight, gleam of glaze will mimic tears of piety. Queen dismisses audience, physicians reluctant but obedient. The lady steps into corridor where Margarine waits, frog tongue necklace visible. She hisses. Her mother intends to expose affair between lady and poet. The lady smiles, presses into the girl's hand a folded slip of parchment. The poet's latest sonnet dedicating forthcoming performance to the swan among toads, a veiled compliment to Margarine's daughter. Alliance cemented. Back in personal chambers, she collapses briefly on chaise, chest constricting. Leeches bloodletting plus lead absorption erode strength. She must replenish. She pours pomegranate wine into tin goblet lined with snail shells ground to powder. Calcium binds lead, hindering intestinal uptake. She drinks slowly, mindful of metallic aftertaste. Noon brings new complication. A courier from Glassmaker Guild arrives bearing the 12 diamond dust mirrors, payment for earlier negotiation. But each mirror carries faint fogging along edges, mercury vapor escaping. Handling them risks quicksilver poisoning. She orders courier to store mirrors in cedar chest lined with raw wool. Lanolin absorbs vapors. Another hazard neutered, though temporary. Afternoon sunlight angles through clerestory, illuminating dust motes swirling like galaxies. She opens herbal grimoire inherited from a great-aunt rumored half-Sibyl. There she finds recipe, mash of ground chickpea flour, honey, and henna leaves. When applied to scalp, counteracts lead's blue halo but stains skin amber. Risk of detection, though, amber might pass as rare Eastern dye if styled gracefully. She decides to test on hidden patch behind ear, timing development as preparations continue. As twilight swells, Vespers bells toll. She approaches chapel cloister in plain mantle, hair veiled.
Queen stands by font, bishops arrayed like marble statues. She kneels. Monk ladles pure water, substituted earlier by her loyal page with reliquary water free of silver. Cool liquid drips across forehead, mixing with egg-white glaze, forming pearly rivulets that catch candle glow. Congregation gasps at such luminous tears. Queen herself seems moved, believing she witnesses grief made sacrament. Ceremony ends with hymn. Her hands tremble, but no discoloration betrays her. Victory breathes warm for an instant. Yet another messenger intercepts her en route to supper. The poet, her once strategic bard, was found convulsing in scriptorium, lips blackened. Silver nitrate, or poison meant for her? Guard already suspecting. She orders discreet removal of poet to apothecary, instructs to circulate rumor of epileptic seizure triggered by candle fumes. She senses tightening net of accidents designed to implicate. Night banquet unfurls under frescoed ceiling. Courses arrive. Pale carp in almond milk. Quails glazed with fig. She declines meat, citing Lenten devotion. Eats only bread and candied violets. Candied violets conceal crushed charcoal and thistle, detox mixture. Across table, Queen's advisor watches, scribbling into ledger, documenting her abstentions. Suddenly, a page stumbles, upsetting pewter pitcher. Red wine arcs, splashing her sleeves. She rises quickly, but not before droplets pepper gown. Under torchlight, wine resembles spilled blood. Gasps ripple. She seizes theatrics, presses stained sleeve to lips like saint bearing stigmata. In sorrow, even wine weeps, she murmurs, voice ragged. An uncle countess crosses herself. Momentum of scrutiny shifts from suspicion to awe, if only momentarily. Later, in her study, she pries leeches off delicate tissue. They drop into porcelain bowl, now plump as overripe berries. She feels dizzy, sits beside hearth. Question snarls. Is this path sustainable? Each remedy spawns another malady. Each triumph invites fiercer challenge. She recalls mother's words. Power is a gown embroidered with needles. Wear it long, and they pierce deeper. Perhaps time to craft an exit strategy that preserves legend without enduring rot. She unfolds fresh parchment, inks declaration establishing a new charitable house for herbal curatives of the poor, endowing it with estates recently acquired from Glassmaker Guild. Public philanthropy to pivot narrative, anchor her legacy to healing rather than vanity. She signs with tremor only she notices, blotches sand to dryness. She cleans face with elderflower tonic, letting charcoal wash away. Underneath, complexion glows faint ivory, ghost of former brilliance. The transformation is subtle but sincere. She leaves cheeks bare, allows natural shadows. A rehearsal for future authenticity, or a final illusion of it. Before dawn, she writes 3 letters. To Dowager Queen expressing gratitude and pledging devotion. To Margravine confirming music endorsement. To the poet, if he survives, granting him stipend to continue verses far from court, in monastery by sea. She seals each with beeswax-tinted lavender, symbol of serenity. Her body yearns for rest, yet she delays. Opening window. Cool pre-dawn air carries scent of distant peat fires, salt of marsh. She inhales, unfiltered. No fan, no perfume in air. Skin prickles.
She thinks of all women, past and future, who will swallow strange powders, paint unknown elixirs onto skin, bleed themselves for fleeting glow. She wonders if any of them will hear this whispered counsel. There is power beyond the mirror's promise. Beauty that survives candlelight costs nothing but the courage to reveal what poisons have hidden. She is not sure she believes it, but finds comfort in sending the thought forward through centuries. The eastern sky blurs peach over battlements. In courtyard below, guards change shift. Their armor glints honest steel. She closes window, draws curtains, leaves lamp unlit. On table, gold leaf map of her face curls with night's damp. Pinpricks forming new constellations. She sets it beside candle, touches corner with flame. Gold vaporizes into shimmering ash that lifts and vanishes, taking cartography of imperfections with it.
She lowers herself onto bed without gloves, without lead veil. Sheets cool against bare palms. Maid approaches with question in eyes. Apply creams? She shakes head. Not tonight. Maybe never again. Or maybe the game pauses merely until dawn reveals another battlefield. Future remains unwritten, but for the first time in years, uncertainty feels lighter than certainty. As slumber steals over her, she pictures the castle corridors tomorrow buzzing with rumors. Some will say she was exposed and repented. Others will swear she invented a new form of beauty beyond paints. Both tales will carve her myth, and myths outlive flesh. Lead, leeches, blood pearls, charcoal tears, each tool a stepping stone across dark waters. She has reached the far bank. Whether she builds home here or dives deeper is yet to be decided. For now she sleeps, the castle holding its breath once more, and the rafters gather fresh moonlit dust. Thus ends our long night wandering through the strangest chambers of noble beauty, where poison masqueraded as pearl, and mirrors doubled as shields, where vanity dueled mortality until the candles guttered out. May the tale settle over you like silk, slow your thoughts, and escort you gently toward dreams uncluttered by lead or leeches. Rest well. History will still be humming its perilous lullabies when you wake.